tonight's top story, we will be looking back in time at old style versus new style political campaigns and how they have evolved over time. First, we will consider party-centered campaigns, that's the old style. Then we'll move to candidate-centered campaigns, and then finally, we'll look at consultant-centered campaigns, which are the new version of campaigns. First, we'll send it out to our party-centered campaign expert, Mr. Rick Smith. Rick, how you doing tonight?
Yes, Andrew. In the past, the party leaders would decide who the candidate should be, and really what their platforms would be throughout the campaign. And really, the party was in charge of how the campaign would function from day to day. Early party-centered campaigns, they didn't focus much on the candidates. It was more so the party and its issues. In the 50s, and then even before the 50s, really, it was more of a retail politics world. It was where people would go, and they would go door to door and talk face to face, and they would see people. I mean, nowadays it's more through the media, and they don't have as much face to face contact. But back then it was more of a face to face thing. And also back then, campaign workers were offered jobs at the end of it as opposed to money. Like nowadays, people are paid for what they do, but back then it was more of a you work for us and we'll get you a job afterwards somewhere. But politics was viewed more as a sociable affair, and fundraising was done. It was done mostly by the parties, because the consultants they weren't there. It was the party was in charge of everything, and back then they would do the fundraising. They would decide what was going to happen. All that, and now it's the consultants.
Okay, Rick. Now, when did we see this shift in the way campaigns were run? I mean, like around what time? Like what year about?
Well, I would say about the mid-1950s is where it started to change. It was about then whenever the advertisers came in, and then they started to dress up the candidate more and make them more appealing. It wasn't as much the parties that people were selling. It was the actual candidate. So I would say about mid-1950s.
Okay, thank you very much, Rick. Now we're going to go ahead and send it out to Tom, who is our candidate-centered campaign expert. What do you have to say, Tom?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Rick was right when he said it started about the early 1950s, mid-1950s. It started about 1952 when you began to see advertisers come in and they started to sell the candidate and his ideals to the public instead of the party as a whole. The ads would display the candidate as more of a product. They would make him. They would try to make him seem more appealing to the general public, and they tried to sell the candidate to the people. The campaigns were conducted by armies of volunteers, usually local party activists, and actually the candidate's friends and his family would do a lot of that. And it's still done like that today, but not as much so. The consultants are more in charge now, and they decide who does what instead of the candidate. The candidate-centered campaigns, it's kind of difficult for the candidate because they're in charge of their own campaigning and their funds, so it puts more stress on the candidates rather than the party that was doing it at the beginning. And now the consultants are more in charge of it. So I mean, there was that middle period where it was more the candidates than anybody.
Okay, now Tom, like you just said, friends and family are still used to canvass and campaign for the candidate. So would you say it's old campaigning or new campaigning, or is it sort of a mixture of both? Could you maybe clarify?
Oh yeah, well, like I said earlier, like friends and family, they're still involved today, but it's not as much as it used to be. I mean, they are, but it's more of like they just do it for show. I mean, they still do help a lot. I'll give you that, but it's kind of a mixture because there's some aspects of it that are done today that were done then, like the campaigns. The candidates still have final say on what happens today, and they did then too. But now the consultants, they put more into it, and the candidates aren't behind everything. They just make the final decision. It's not completely different than it was then, but it's kind of a mixture of the two. Actually, it's just kind of evolved, and it's become more of a consultant centered. But the candidate still does have some say.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom. Now we're going to go ahead and send it out to Jim. He is our consultant-centered campaign expert, and he's going to kind of maybe help wrap this up. Let's hear what you have to say, Jim. Yes, Andrew, thank you very much. The newest revolution in campaigns is the consultant-centered campaign. It intensifies the importance of money in the election process.
Traditional political parties have lost ground to campaign consultants. The parties which once served as the organizational foundation of American politics now serve as the financial resource to the candidates. This money is spent on a variety of specialized services, such as high budget media production. They are able to purchase better time slots and create higher quality advertisements. And now with things like new media, like social media, like Facebook and Twitter, candidates have an easier time reaching the people. They can sign up for these Facebook pages or Twitter profiles, and the people they can follow them or like them or whatever, and they're right there, and they can reach the people so much easier for free. I mean, I think that this is probably going to have a great effect on campaigns to come. I mean, they can raise money through that. They can gain voters and followers through that. And I think the revolution in campaign technology has had and will continue to have a substantial effect on elections. Candidates rely on the expertise of campaign professionals. As campaigns get more complicated, the more consultants are needed. And I think that it's just going to continue to get more intense and more difficult, and then I think more consultants are going to become more specialized in their fields, and it's going to become more efficient, and I think that that's where it's heading. It's going to keep going that way. Okay, thank you very much, Jim, and Rick and Tom. It was very insightful. So I guess I'd have to say in conclusion, old-style campaigning has evolved into this new style with the consultants, where as in the beginning it was more party-centered. They were in charge of what happened, and then it was the candidates, and now it's consultants who decide what happened. But like they said, candidates have the final say. So I guess it has evolved, and social media is looking like it's going to probably take it a step further. So I guess that's all we have for tonight. Thank you, and we hope to see you tomorrow night.